Hello guys, and welcome to today's class. And in this class we'll be looking at forms in which living cells exist. We've started with cells, so we'll be looking at the various forms in which they exist. At this point I want to encourage you to ensure that you have your notes and your writing materials with you, and just to encourage you that to be wise, if you have a single note for this biology series, possibly a hardcover note, something that you can always fall back to, you can go to when you need any information from, rather than having it piece here and there. So try to get a very good and concise note and sit down, relax, and follow the teaching. Always remember, you can drop your questions, you can drop your comments and reviews at the various sections. Alright, so today we'll be looking at forms in which living things exist. Now the first, as we have on the board, they exist as single and free living organisms. Single and free living organisms. Now, these organisms, as we have, they are interdependent. As we have them here, interdependent and free living organisms. So interdependent and free living organisms are organisms which possesses only one cell and are capable of living freely on their own. That's it, they are unicellular because they are unicellular because they have one cell. And part of their characteristics also is that they are capable of living freely. They can live freely. So each of these organisms, even though has only one cell, they can carry out all the life processes. All the life processes as we have here, the feeding, carry out feeding, they can move, that's movement, they can reproduce, they are sensitive, they can grow, they can excrete, respiration, and etc. Now examples of these interdependent or free living organisms as well here are amoeba, we have euglena, paramecium, and chlamydomonas. So these are examples of single and free living organism. So we'll just take an example in the next slide just to explain a little bit of this. Now here we have the structure of an amoeba. We have the structure of an amoeba. Now a little pointers about amoeba. Amoeba is an organism that has irregular shape. We'll just take a little bit of its characteristics here. It has an irregular shape, while some tell that it is shapeless because the shape is not uniform. So it has an irregular shape and changes constantly. So you can't say this is the particular shape of an amoeba. The shape is irregular and it changes constantly. Now we're meant to understand that the protoplasm is made of nucleus and cytoplasm, which is embedded in the and you have food vacuoles, contractile vacuoles embedded in the cytoplasm, and this amoeba moves with the aid of pseudopodia. So looking at the structure here, now like I just said, amoeba moves with the aid of pseudopodia. You have it here. Look at it, it's cycled. Pseudopodia. Here we have pseudopodium, which is singular. Now when you have two of them together, it becomes pseudopodia, which is the plural. Now we have the food vacuole. Like I earlier said, we have the food vacuole here. For it, you have the contractile vacuole here. Then the cytoplasm, very important, because you know it's one of the very vital organs of the cell. Alright, so this is an amoeba which has an irregular shape and changes from time to time. It's a unicellular organism, and these are just some parts of the label of an amoeba. We just highlighted a few. You have all of them: endoplasm, ectoplasm, your plasmalemia, you have them contractile vacuole, and etc. So these and others, like we said, paramecium is also part of it, chlamydomonas, euglena, they are all part. So we just decided to take a single example for just the sake of this class, so you can still check those up for more insight about them. All right, we'll move to the next form in which living thing can exist. In this number 2, they exist as a colony, as colonies. Now, some of these organisms are made of many similar cells which are joined or massed together, but they cannot be differentiated from one another. So that's in other words, cells, they form a closely arranged association of 2 or more cells, but the cells cannot be differentiated from each other. Now, this aggregation of interdependent cells or protists is called a colony. Now, if you look at the diagram very closely, this is an example of a Volvox. Volvox is an example of this class. Then we have our Pandorina, and we have our sponges. So this diagram we have here is a Volvox. This is a Volvox. Now, when you look at the label here, this one that is circled, you see this is the cells, and if you follow the labeling of the cells, you can see that these cells are joined together. You see the way they are joined together. Now, this joined together of these cells make them like a whole. They are together. They are not independent. So they are interdependent on one another. So they come together and they form what you call a colony together. So all of them form a colony. So this one ways in which, or forms in which living things can exist. Now the third form is as a filament. They exist as a filament. Now cells are organized into filaments in which identical cells are joined end to end to form unbranched filament, and each cell function as an interdependent living cells. Such organisms are multicellular, therefore exist as filament. An example of these filamentous organisms are Zygnema. You have them here. See, Oregonium, you have it here. Please watch the spelling. Then we have Oscillatoria. You have them here. So these are examples. Let's just take a look at a diagram. Now, this is an example of Spirogyra that exists in the form of a filament. Now, you want to know, filaments are just like tiny threads. Now, tiny threads that join things together. If you've seen an electric bulb, the inside, you see it always has filaments. There are always very tiny wires for that. So for an organism like Spirogyra, now I will just circle this. Just watch this, that will circle. So this part like this, you see them, this straight line you see here, which is labeled the cytoplasmic strands. So these are like the tiny strands of thread that holds the cell together. You see it's running horizontally and some are running diagonally. So these cells, they run like that, these cytoplasmic strands, to see that they hold these cells in place so that they can function. Hence the arrangement as filaments. You begin to see them like that because of these tiny threads that holds them together. And so that's for the forms in which living things exist. Now very quickly, be looking at the cell. But what we have here, we have similarities and differences between plants and animal cell. But to be wise, we just do a little review on cell as a topic. So since we've started with cell from the beginning, I would say the cell is defined as the structural and functional unit of a living organism. That says the basic unit of life. That's the cell. Now it's the basic unit of life because it can carry out all life activities. That's why it's the basic unit of life, such as feeding, reproduction, excretion, growth, adaptation, respiration, sensitivity, movement, and movement. So because it can carry out all these things, therefore it's the basic unit of life, because everything, as we've looked at in the organization of life in previous topics, they have to come together to form tissues and organs and systems. So but where it starts from is definitely from the cell. I will know that we have unicellular organisms, one cell, multicellular organisms, and those organisms that have more than one cell. And just to add for knowledge sake, you know that Robert Hooke was one of the first people that made a discovery on the cell. He had work on. After that, several other people came up with different kind of work on the cell and the cell theory as well. So these are some of the things just to refresh your mind. You may just go through them, through any useful materials, because they would do. So coming to our topic for today, now we have on the screen similarities and differences between plant and animal cell. Now this diagram, as you can see, for both plant and animal cell has been captured for you like this, so that together we'll do a teamwork here, would pick out the similarities, right? Then we'll pick out the differences from the label as you can see them like this. Then after which we can talk about some of their functions of the organelles that are there. So now first let's go to the similarities. Now if you look at the structure we have above is the plant cell, while the one below is the animal cell. So let me just write here are similarities. Now let's take similarities. Number one. So coming here, if you look at the plant cell has a nucleus. Here it's marked here. Then when you go down to the animal cell, so the animal cell also has a nucleus right here. So we can come back here and just pen it down. Nucleus. I'll go for number 2. As a nucleus is both of the cells, they both have nucleus. Then the next we want to go for, we have Golgi apparatus here in plant cell. Then you come to animal cell, you got it here also, Golgi body. Mind you, they are both the same. Either you call it Golgi apparatus or Golgi body. So they are different school of thought, and anyone you use is correct. So here we have Golgi. And remember, when spelling your Golgi, it's a capital letter because it's a noun. Golgi body. Then the third one, let's move again, let's check. So I hope you're doing it with me. You can still check as we're going. Now here I have mitochondria. I have mitochondria. Now what you see is mitochondrion. That's the singular. Mitochondria is the plural, because if you look at the structure very well, you can see that you have more than one mitochondrion. They are scattered around the cell. Then coming to the animal cell, you have your mitochondrion here. So we'll see at point number 3 we have mitochondrion. Number 4, we have cytoplasm. Number 4 is cytoplasm. These are cytoplasm here under plant cell. Then under animal cell, this is it. this here. So number 4, we have cytoplasm. Don't forget, we are trying to bring out the similarities between plant and animal cells. Number 5, let's pick one more, and there are still others, and I know you can pick them out. Looking at them, you can equally pick them. So we'll just pick one more. We'll just do one more with you. Now we'll pick endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum, the ER. Plant cell, this is it. And the animal cell, you have, look at it here, just watch me, this is it. Endoplasmic reticulum. But if you look down again on the animal cell here, this part that has been underlined, you see there's a difference. This is the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, while this one that was circled first, that is this, is the rough endoplasmic reticulum. But when you look here on the plant cell, you just see endoplasmic reticulum. Now, what's the difference between the smooth and the rough? If you look at it, the rough is actually looking rough, while the smooth is looking very smooth. So the difference is the presence of ribosomes. You can see them here, ribosomes on the reticulum. If you have ribosomes on the endoplasmic reticulum, it looks rough, the surface, hence the name rough endoplasmic reticulum. But in the absence of ribosomes on it, the surface is quite neat and smooth, so hence the name smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So here we have the 5th one we're able to identify is endoplasmic reticulum. Alright, so these are some of the similarities, not all of them. So that said, we did 5 together. I trust you can still pick out the rest. You just go to the first structure, pick out one of the organelle, go to the second and compare. If you can find it, it's a similarity. That's the both have it. That's mean of similarity, what both cells have. Now we would be going to the differences between these plants and animal cells. So let's just have it like this also. Differences. This way your notebook becomes important. Now you may decide to tabulate your differences, to have it in a tabular form, and you may decide to just note it, but the end is that you should be able to see these differences and similarities. You should know them, and whenever you are being asked or you face an examination, it shouldn't really be a challenge for you, because that's the end to why we are doing all this. Okay, now the first difference we'll pick out here is plant cell has chloroplast. This is it here, chloroplast, while animal cell has no chloroplast. I hope we are taking note. Plant cell has chloroplast. Okay, let me just indicate like this: plant, then here we have animals, so that to make it a little easier for us, then I would have my line here. So point number 1 said is chloroplast, why this no chloroplast. So can tell under plants presence of chloroplast, animals absence of chloroplast. Now this chloroplast is what contains chlorophyll, as the green pigment in plant that enables them to be able to manufacture their own food. And as you know, animals cannot manufacture their own food, so because they lack this chloroplast. Now difference number 2. Now you see that the plant cell, if you look at the shape, it has a definite shape. while for animal, no definite shape. No definite shape. Now because now the plant cell has cellular cell wall, which makes it quite rigid. If you look at this, let me just point it out for you. Here. Now how about the primary wall, cell wall, and the secondary cell wall, which helps it to have a definite shape. But if you look at the animal cell, it doesn't have that. It only has the plasma membrane, which is cell membrane, which the plant cells also have. So this cell membrane is quite flexible and permeable. It's not as solid as the cellular cell wall in plant. So therefore, plants have a definite shape, while animal shape are not definite. Then let's pick another difference. Just scroll down a bit so that I can write it out. Difference number 3. Now, plant cell has large vacuoles. Let me point it out. There are vacuoles here. This is the vacuole for plant cell. If you follow it, you see the large space here. Let me just make a mark inside so that you can see. So all these parts like this that I'm doing this tracing, you see that, like all these ones, it's tend to be the vacuole. You can see that it's quite large. While so we just pen it down. While for animal cell, if you check out their vacuole, this is the vacuole for animal cell. Ooh, you can see it's quite small, nothing compared to that of the plant cell. So we just write that's the difference. Here we have large vacuole, and here for animal we have small vacuole. Okay. Now other ones you can find here is, now we have quite a number of them, like the plants, like we earlier said, they store starch as they store glucose as starch. Okay, we'll just take these 3 differences as we can pinpoint here, but there are way more than this. Now another difference between plants and animal is that the plant has a rigid cell wall. I've said that that's what gives them a definite shape, rigid cell wall, while the animal cell doesn't have a rigid cell wall. That's part of the differences. And that difference is that plant stores oil, that's another difference, that plant stores lipids as oil, while animal stores lipids as fat. Now in plant cell, now there's an absence of centrosomes and centrioles. It's a difference. While in animal cells, centrioles and centrosomes are present in animal cells. So these are just some of the differences that they have between them. So you have them. All these things are not all inclusive, like I said. It's supposed to be a short video clip where you just learn something at a glance and pen down something so that you can always refresh your mind. So this can always be with you on your phone anytime, have access to it. You can pause it, listen, rewind, and etc. So, but that's not to say you would neglect other materials and other useful things. All of them put together would give you a whole complete knowledge. All right, let's make progress. Now we look at the functions of cell components. Now we've highlighted some of the organelles, the components or organelles, yes, the organs found there. We've highlighted some of the similarities and difference in the previous slide. So here we'll be looking at some of the functions of these organs. We have them. What are their functions? What do they do? Yeah, so that's what we'll be looking at in this section, and this will be the last we'll be looking at on this in this lesson for today. All right, number one, we have the nucleus. We have our nucleus right here, number one, and we can see we have two functions. It controls all life activities of the cell. Like I said in the previous slide, the nucleus is very, very important, like the center and the heart of everything. So it controls all life activities, very important. And it stores hereditary information, which contains your DNA. Remember, your DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, it's in your nucleus. So that's what the nucleus does. It stores that hereditary information and it controls other life activities. And your chromosomes, number two, it contains the DNA, which stores genetic traits. Now these genetic traits are those heritable traits, heritable characteristics you inherit from your parents. So you find them in the DNA, and the DNA is being contained in the chromosome. So that's where you find those genetic traits. Now we have the third, the mitochondria. The third is mitochondria. You have them here. That's it. Now, watch very closely. It said it is described as the powerhouse of the cell. Is the powerhouse of the cell. Now, why is it the powerhouse of the cell? Because you always hear that. Now, because it is the site of respiration or cellular respiration, where simple sugar or sugar is being broken down to release energy. You know, sometimes you can teach somebody, or like, when you come to my house, would you come to the powerhouse? There's a room where we call the power room. You know, we can liken our kitchen to the power room of a complete house. Same thing with the mitochondria. Is the powerhouse of the cell. It's a little organelle of the cell, but that's where the energy you needed to carry out all other activities by the cell is being produced. Same thing with the house. It's just an analogy, just to portray the point to make you understand. Then number 4 here, we have the vacuole. It contains cell sap, which acts as osmoregulator by helping to remove excess water in cells. So the vacuole is also important. And we have the nucleolus. Number 5, nucleolus. They produce the ribosomes for protein synthesis. Then endoplasmic reticulum, we've seen this also. They aid the transportation material within the cells. So when these materials are being produced, this endoplasmic reticulum helps to be able to transport them from where they are produced to where they are needed to carry out their own function. We have Golgi bodies, number 7. They function in synthesis. Synthesis means to produce. So they produce, synthesize, they package and distribute materials in the cell. The next, we have the chloroplasts. They contain the chlorophyll, which aid photosynthesis in green plants. Chloroplasts contain chlorophyll. Don't forget, chlorophyll is the green pigment, is the pigment that makes green plants green. All right. So number 9, we have lysosome. Number 9, lysosomes. They are site for respiratory enzymes. You see, and some texts, some scholars also tell you that ribosomes are known as suicide bag, just like the mitochondria is known as powerhouse. So suicide bag in the sense that if a cell is getting old, it can't do things, or it needs to destroy something. The lysosome contains enzymes that once they release, it can destroy the cell. So it's just like suicide is killing of oneself. The lysosome is inside the cell. It releases enzyme that will kill both itself and the cell entirely. So it's been likened to a suicide bag. Then lastly here we have the ribosomes. They are responsible for protein synthesis. Remember, ribosomes you find on the rough endoplasmic reticulum we talked about in the previous slide. So their own function is to produce or synthesize protein, which is needed in the cell. Alright, so that will be it basically for today's class. Just a very quick recap. We started with similarities and differences between plant and animal cell, but before that we defined the cell, talked about briefly the forms in which the cells exist, and some of the people that contributed to the history of the cell, so that we can have what we have today to study and learn, and the cell theory and a little bit of that. Then we went to the similarities. We highlighted 5 with you, but you can see there are way more than 5. I can't see them, so I would expect it's a little exercise. You try to point them out yourself so you can see. Then we looked at the difference between this plant and animal. We picked 3, but we gave way more than 3, so I wanted to just leave the diagram up so that we can see and relate the two. So I guess you can pen those differences down. And then we now went to look at the functions of cell components or cell organelles that we have inside the cell. What are their functions? What do they do? And don't forget, this is very important because you are made up of cells. Remember, you're an organism. You have cell, you have tissues, you have organs, you have system. So it's good if you know some of these things that make you up and how they function. It's very important. So thank you for your time. Please don't forget that your questions, you can drop them at the question section. Comments and reviews, you can leave that at the review section. Thank you very much. Have a nice time.